Hello, and welcome to Presenting, a podcast where we chat about various topics related to role playing games, typically Paizo products such as Pathfinder and Starfinder, but also others. I'm John Godek, and with me today is Navaar Seik-Jackson. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, no,
Uh,
it's great to get to chat with you more in person, so to speak. Now.
yeah, absolutely.
So, Navarre is a podcaster, writer, and game designer. His Secret Nerd podcast showcases marginalized creators and game designers in the tabletop RPG space. He is especially interested in horror and skill based narrative games and recently completed The Corrupted, a game about exploring human conflict through the backdrop of an apocalypse. Navarre recently joined our flagship No Direction podcast and is also part of the cast of Unwavering Force, a Pathfinder second edition actual play with an all BIPOC cast.
Yeah.
All right. You can find Navarre on the No Direction Network at secretnerdpodcast.com and on Twitter at NavarreSNP. That's a lot.
Yeah. I know.
So,
I recently added so many things, so it it adds up.
no, that's great. And you're a father too, on
Yeah.
top of all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
So
Somehow I
I
find time.
my kids are all grown up, so I have time for doing this now.
Yeah. Mine are all under 5 for a few more weeks, and
Wow.
it's a lot for sure.
Yes. No, for sure. For sure. So, Navarre, can you talk a little bit about your podcasting and game design work? And in particular, how did you get started working in this space?
Yeah, so podcasting came first. I basically around 2019 I started listening to podcasts. I really wanted to play TTRPGs, but I didn't have a group at home to play
Hmm.
them, and
Hmm.
so I started just listening, just as a way to like consume that style of media and learn a little bit about the games. And the first podcast that was actually the one that I caught on to was actually a Pathfinder First Edition podcast, the Glass Can podcast.
Hmm.
And yeah, I really loved it. I had played TTRPGs prior for like a total of like 5 sessions, but it had been almost 10 years um, between that and me listening to podcasts about it. And as I just started to listen more and start to pick up other shows, I really just wanted to do it. And I really love the idea of making an actual play. But making an actual play requires a lot of work if you want to do it. I think if you want to do it right and you want to like come out of the gate swinging, it takes a lot. And that wasn't something I was really prepared to do because I had never even done a podcast before.
Hmm.
But what I found was that I really enjoyed interview podcasts. I really enjoyed listening to somebody who was good at talking to other people, talk to them, and listen about people's stories. And some of the shows that I was listening to, they didn't have like it wasn't always like famous people or things. It was sometimes just people you would like run into on a street, or like maybe they were like
Hmm.
famous in their circle, but it wasn't like they were like a celebrity. But they had a really interesting story to tell. And I think just in listening to that and seeing like kind of what the podcast landscape was like, I really wanted to see what it would be like if I could meet other people who did teach RPGs. Initially, it was just like people who even played them. I wasn't really thinking about like other podcasters and creators at the time, but people
Hmm.
who play TTRPGs who are marginalized because um, Pathfinder or uh, Glass Cannon podcast is a show that I love, but it's also 5 white guys.
Yeah.
You know, so a lot of these shows had similar makeup, and I wanted to see like what it was like for other people who look like me or who are also marginalized, and what were their experiences like. So I kind of just went with that idea. I talked to my friend group because I'm fortunate that my friend group is already a group of marginalized people, and then I did the big venture of getting on Twitter at the age of 33 for the first time, and
Yeah.
and started to just try to meet people. And so I met Joe, who became a real friend of mine. Joe is from the Makers Misfits podcast, which is a Pathfinder 2e podcast, an all BIPOC Pathfinder 2e podcast. And yeah, and it just kind of grew from there. Like after the first 4 interviews were really cool. It was my friends, but it was really cool to get to know them better. Um,
Mhm.
but interviewing Joe, I think, really opened up my mind to the idea that I maybe had something special, that maybe I could be a voice that could bring out people's experiences in a way that made them feel comfortable and vulnerable and want to share that. And yeah, it just kind of took off. I scheduled way too many interviews, and it took me
Yes.
about 3 months to learn to like slow
Yeah.
down and like plan better.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it just kept rolling. And so as I was continuing, I met more, a lot of podcasters and streamers and stuff like that. But then I also started to meet game designers. Um, and so one of like the first um, special game designers that I got to meet was Quinn Murphy, who has written
Mhm.
for
Yeah.
Paizo. And yeah, meeting Quinn was great because he's another black man, and it was really cool to see like he's been doing it. He designed his own games. He has freelanced for Paizo and for other people, and so it it was one of those things where like when people talk about representation, we talk about like how much it allows you to see that something can be done, something that felt like it was out of your reach, is attainable. And Quinn was that person for me, and made it even better because then he helped sort of mentor me as I started on my path of like learning to write adventures and uh, writing games and things like that. And yeah, so I met more and more of these folks. I met a person who designed a SRD for, called the Caltrop Core, and that was the first game I designed, was a one page. And
Mhm.
I've loved detective stuff for
Mhm.
my whole life, and like the idea of like Sherlock Holmes specifically. Um, and so I wanted to make a game where somebody could solve mysteries, and yeah, so the first game I made was called The Last Detective, and then after that I was like, well, I made a one page RPG. I should make a big game now, and
Mhm.
and I don't want to use somebody else's system, um, which I don't know. That's a give or take. I think there's plenty of
Mhm.
merits to making your own system, and I think there's a ton of merits to using a system that's already been tested and established and has an audience. So, but yeah, I really enjoyed the challenge of it, in and I really am happy and proud with what that became in the Corrupted. And yeah, it's been a really fun ride to see, to go from like I'm doing this thing, with basically very little help, and put it out digitally, and then have the opportunity to work with a publisher to get this thing physically published here pretty soon. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Very cool. Yeah. I saw that the Corrupted is inspired by The Last of Us.
Yes. Yeah.
Did you watch the whole HBO series?
I made a podcast about the whole HBO series.
Oh,
So
okay.
yes.
I did not know. I
Yeah, yeah. It's called Escape the Dark. Yeah. My
yeah.
friend who, so basically, it's the timeline all connects. One of the interviews I did was with my wonderful friend Indrani. They are from Mumbai, and they are the co-creator of Daisies and Dragons, which is a
Mm.
like the largest TTRPG community in India. And we were talking, and we got into video games, and we both started talking about The Last of Us, and
Yeah.
then we spent like 30 minutes talking about it. And then we joked on the interview, and this is like the first time of us meeting, we joked like, well, we should
Yeah.
just do a podcast about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then that joke was like a thing, like as we continued to talk over time, we were like, well, I
Yeah.
mean, but what if we did? And
Yeah.
then I made the game. They helped me with a lot of the ideas and with the editing. And then when the show was coming up, I was like, well, look, we've been joking about this for a while. What if we just actually made a podcast about it? And we did it based on the first season, and then we can talk about the games after that.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's what we did. We're returning probably in the next month or so with
Nice.
some new episodes on the video game. But yeah, we cover the entire show.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah,
I maybe I should have listened to that. I watched it when it first came out, and then I took a break, and I just finished it up this week,
yeah.
the very end.
I've
You
seen
know,
every episode 3 times at least.
yeah, yeah. I there's certain parts I really enjoyed a
Mhm,
lot,
mhm.
And then the ending was different, not what I expected,
Yeah. Did you ever play the games?
I did not. I
Okay.
actually have
Yeah.
not, so
Yeah. Yeah. I think the I really love the show. Obviously, I've watched it multiple times and did a podcast about
mhm,
it, but I really do genuinely love it. I did have some issues with it, and I think a lot of it was more of I think my theory is that, or my hypothesis is that the HBO didn't know if there was going to be a second season.
right,
And because they didn't know, they gave them a sort of like, these are your amount of episodes and the structure you have. And within that frame, they had to fit in a lot of stuff. And so they
right,
wanted to add new
right,
things. And the new stuff they
right,
added was amazing. But they also had to fit in like, okay, well, now we're getting towards the end. So the last
right.
episode being 40 minutes, I believe, um, was just too short, in my opinion.
Yeah, I thought
Do
so
I still,
too. It
yeah, yeah.
kinda anticlimactic, actually,
In a
to
way,
some
yeah. It
extent.
just
Yeah,
I feel like there could have
yeah,
been 15 more minutes of
yeah,
scene, and I would have been really happy about it.
yeah,
But yeah, I'm very excited that they renewed it and that we're
mhm,
getting a second season, and hopefully, the Writers Guild strike that's going on, the writers get paid, and we can get
right,
back, and everybody's
right,
happy, and we have a well written show.
yeah. Yeah, I
But yeah,
really like Pedro Pascal. I can really identify
yes.
with him as an older brown person, so
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, he did amazing in the role. As like a
yeah,
super fan of the game, I absolutely loved him as that character.
yeah.
So yeah.
Cool, cool. So, other big news. So,
Mhm.
Unwavering Force, that podcast just released last week. Can you talk
Yeah.
about it?
Yeah. So An Unwavering Force is a show that has been like 9 months in the making.
Mhm,
We are an all BIMPOC queer led cast, and we basically are doing Star Wars, but using Pathfinder 2e. We
mhm,
talked about a lot of different systems, but I think we had 3 or 4 people in the group that already loved and played Pathfinder 2e.
mhm,
And so we talked about it, and just like there's so many things that the system can do, and I really love the idea of like how powerful Pathfinder 2 makes you feel as a PC. And so I was like, well, if we do it, like I want to feel like a powerful Jedi. Like
right.
I want to be able to take out like bunch of,
Yeah,
stormtroopers or whatever, because that's what would really happen. Like it
yeah,
wouldn't be a one Jedi versus one battle droid and have a high risk of losing that fight. And so we talked about how that would work. And so yeah, we decided on Pathfinder 2e. We decided on doing dual class, and then we homebrew some things, obviously, like lightsabers and ships. Some of the
mhm,
stuff we pull from Starfinder for how that works, but for the most part, yeah, we're just figuring out how we can flavor feats and spells to fit into the Star Wars universe, and then just trying to tell a really amazing story. So yeah, it's highly edited. We have 2 editors, myself included,
nice.
and well produced, and yeah, we are very very excited about it.
Cool, cool. Yeah, I will definitely have to check that out for
Yeah.
sure. So,
Yeah, I
you
play
mentioned
a sorry, I was
go
just gonna
ahead.
say I play
Yeah,
a a Padawan who is escaping Order 66.
mhm.
So if that doesn't sell you on it, I don't know what will.
Yeah, and so I guess, you kinda mentioned that. Um, I'm just thinking you if you're a Padawan, so you're not a super powerful Jedi yet then, right?
Uh, I I mean more powerful than a stormtrooper for sure. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I think it's interesting in that like when you start to look at like power scaling, right, in
Yeah.
terms of like Star Wars and other things, um, it is an interesting thing. But I think about like uh, Ahsoka in the show
Mhm.
The Clone Wars was
Right,
exceptionally powerful and
right,
could handle herself
right.
in fights against multiple Mandalorians even.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think that yeah, there you have to look at like what is the character versus what is the what are they going up against, and how does that work.
Right.
And I think our GM has done an amazing job with that.
Yeah.
um yeah, it feels really good, and it makes you think about like, well, what is this Jedi gonna look like when
Right, that's what I was
he's
thinking, what that
much higher
trajectory,
level. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, is gonna
yeah,
gonna be for that.
yeah.
Cool. Very cool. So you've been a podcaster for a couple years now, and
Mhm.
one of the things I like to do when I interview podcasters is kind of see how your process works. So, kind of how you record, how you get
Mhm.
guests. You've had some 90 episodes of your own Secret Nerd podcast where you're interviewing people. Some of
Yeah.
the equipment you use, some of the software. Can you talk about that kind of stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So, a lot of for Secret Nerd Podcast, the show's currently on hiatus, but when I
Okay.
was working on getting guests in, typically it was using Twitter. I would reach out to folks on Twitter. As the show grew over time, and as I just continued to meet more people, it was easier because there were generally when I was inviting somebody on, we had already been like mutuals on Twitter and had some interaction
Right.
for a few months at that point. In most cases, some cases not the case. But yeah, so a lot of times it was just like, sending a Twitter DM, or we were in the same Discord and asking if they were interested. I like to pick all of the guests. So I've had sometimes folks ask if they could come on the show, and that usually doesn't end up working out, typically just because I think I enjoy the idea of curating who I'm giving a platform to. um,
Mhm.
and and not to say that like the people who ask aren't worth being interviewed. I think it's just a matter of like I have limited time. I have a long list of folks that I'm already interested in, and
Mhm.
unless you're already on that list, it's like, well, okay, well, I may be able to fit you in, but that means I'm also have to look at what you're doing, and then this might be a 4 or 5 month thing down the line. So,
Right.
but yeah, so it's a lot of that. I think just um, I I am very aware of how I represent myself in the space and my reputation, and how I treat the people that come on my show, because I think that's important. I want folks
Mhm.
to feel safe. We get into a lot of like really vulnerable things on the show, um, and so I definitely want people to feel safe, to feel like they can talk about that stuff, because we're talking about like our life experiences when it comes to how that intersects with TTRPGs. So it is a lot of games talk, but it's also a lot of life talk, and I that's part of why I really love it. Yeah, when I first started, I my friend bought a microphone basically to pressure me into podcasting. So I used his for a little bit. And then I got a different mic. And now I use one that I'm really happy with, which is the Samson Q2U.
Yep.
Um,
Yep. Very
because,
familiar with that.
yeah, I think th- so many mics, like so many people use a lot of like compressor mics, which are
Right.
fine. They have good input. But it catches so much background noise. And as a person who has become progressively more obsessed with getting clean audio, I was like, I
Mhm.
need to eliminate this. And I really love the way that it makes me sound. And when I have other people who have the similar mic, I love the way that they sound with it. So um, yeah, I also use Zencaster,
Mm.
which up
Cool.
until recently was free for everyone.
I know.
Yeah,
It
I was
drives
able
me
to get,
crazy.
yeah, I know. I was able to get onto their Creator Plus program, but I know that's not everybody's thing. And, but I
Mhm.
would encourage you, if you can convince them to do it. Like, I think it's a fantastic program. I'm much happier with it than other paid programs that I've used with other
Yeah.
people's shows.
Mhm.
Um, and what else? Yeah. But mostly it's just this. I have my little box that I've made. My friend Lev did one, or had one for their interview. And then after the interview, I was like, how did you make that? I need to know. And then I made one myself. But yeah, it's a lot of that. I'm trying to think.
What do you edit
Commit
in?
some. What do I edit in? I edit
Yeah.
in Adobe Audition,
Oh, okay. Wow.
um, which I am very happy with. I would say, like, if you're listening to this and you're like curious about doing a podcast and you don't want to pay for Adobe Audition because obviously it's very expensive, Reaper is another option, which I
See,
think does.
Reaper's
Yeah,
what I use.
yeah, yeah,
So, yeah, yeah.
yeah. Reaper is also fantastic. I am not a fan of Audacity. It's free and it works,
Yeah.
but I'm not a fan.
Yeah. Same.
I also, along with that, I recently, for an unwavering force, we also got Descript. So I do all of the sound mixing and mastering in
Hmm.
Adobe Audition. Descript does a transcript for you. It also
Right.
lets you quickly edit out um, ums and uhs and silences and other filler words if you choose to
Wow.
use those words as well. You can just
Wow.
select it from the transcript with the
Yeah.
click of a button and erase them all, and it kind of fills in the silence
Wow.
pretty well. Um,
And
yeah.
that works on the written transcript, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can go
Wow.
find the word and delete
Yeah.
it, and it'll delete it from the track.
Nice. Because I've been thinking about doing that because Zencaster gives you a transcript now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was thinking about starting to do that as well.
Mhm.
So I'll have to look up the Descript. That's cool. See, I
Yeah.
learned something new. That's great.
Yeah. 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 So now on No Direction,
Hmm.
I all I do is sound mastering for No Direction for
Hmm.
Esther and I's episodes. But G uses Descript as well, and that's now why No Direction has transcripts.
Right. Right. Right.
So for
Right.
that podcast, so yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think that covers it. I just use a sort of a Logitech, like the kind of standard webcam
Yeah.
and ring light. I do like to have video on. Appreciate
Hmm.
this because I think it helps with conversation, especially for me
Yeah. Me
as
too.
an autistic person. It helps me kind of see somebody and
Hmm.
can, to the extent that I can gain from cues in a video forum, it helps me a lot in a conversation. But yeah, I think that's it for the equipment stuff.
No, nice, nice. No, that was good. You're the first person I've talked to that actually even knows what a Zencaster is. So that's
I've used it. So yeah,
yeah,
again, like when I first started, I really wanted to make the podcast sound as good as possible.
yeah, yeah,
Which back then I was using Audacity
yeah, yeah.
to edit, and my mic wasn't as good. All this stuff, but over time, I was like, well, what's the best thing? And Zencaster kept popping up as like Zencaster doesn't. It's not as destructive as other programs are. So like if you're
Right.
recording in Zoom, one, you have to pay to record for longer than 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Two, it's not going to sound as good. It's going to sort of destroy your audio a little bit. And then Riverside was the other option, but Riverside is also paid and more expensive. And I've
Right.
had a lot of problems with Riverside
Yeah.
as a
I
guest on other
looked at
people's shows.
Riverside. Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
like it doesn't seem like. And plus, you got to learn a whole new system. Like, I've been
Yeah.
using Zencaster for 3 years,
Yeah.
ever since it was in its first beta, and it's like, yeah. And I tried to get on the creators program there, but it kept every time they approved it, and then it would kick me over to the paid thing to have to pay again for something. So I just said, forget it. I'll just pay for this year, then sort it out. So
Yeah. I was going to say,
yeah,
you should just try, if they approved it, just try changing your plan to Creator Plus and see if it just lets you do it. If you didn't do that already.
yeah. I've tried.
Yeah. That's weird.
Because I record 3 podcasts,
Mhm.
and I messed with it for a while, then I got on the free trial just to figure it out, and then I had to do one, like, it's in 15 minutes, I said, "Forget it," I just, I can't delay, right? I can't ask
Yeah. Yeah.
somebody I'm interviewing to wait while I try to figure it out, so,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
It,
so
it
it's
yeah. It's I mean, I understand like their need to do it. But
yeah,
in terms of just as regards to the platform, I have had very little issues personally with it.
yeah,
And
same,
usually when that happens, generally the issue was like I was on a laptop that was just not powerful enough to do all the things I was trying to do at the same time,
mhm,
and or like somebody's computer froze,
right,
and then like the
right.
very very occasional the server with Zencaster is having an issue and just you can't even get a recording going, and that's been maybe a couple times.
Only 2 out of 300 episodes have I had an issue,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that's a pretty good track record for me,
for sure.
so you mentioned joining the No Direction Network, and now you're
Yeah.
on our flagship podcast. Can you talk about how that's been so far?
Yeah. So it's been pretty amazing. I was a guest on No Direction last year in February. Michelle asked me to come on and talk about
Hmm.
stuff, and that was pretty amazing. Um, I've been a longtime Pathfinder 2e fan, and I talk about Pathfinder 2e incessantly on my show whenever somebody gives me opportunity when it comes up. So, yeah, it was pretty amazing. I have been friends with Esther for a while now. we sort of like uh, she was doing a she does a Pathfinder 2e show called Chromythica.
Hmm.
Go check it out. And I try to support all of the Pathfinder 2e shows that I'm aware of, especially if they have marginalized cast. And just over time, finally got her on the show. And as it was coming up to like she was going to be one of the hosts. The other person that was going to host with her just wasn't available anymore. And so she really wanted me to come on, which I'm very flattered by. And I immediately said yes, because I love Pathfinder 2e. And I was like, yeah, you get to talk about this all the time, of course. But yeah, it's been really, really amazing. Ryan and all the other folks who are involved have been absolutely wonderful and welcoming. It's been really, really cool to get to see a lot of these books and talk about them, and get to talk to, writers and designers for this stuff, and sort of get the like immediate scoop, and also be sort of that voice for um, the Pathfinder content in a lot of ways, for new folks that are coming into it and listening to a show to learn about like, oh, well, is this book worth getting? Or what is this actually going to entail? What am I getting out of this stuff? I think the No Direction Network does an amazing job of just like outlining so many aspects of
Hmm.
this line of products. So yeah, I enjoy being a part of that team that gets to sort of convey that to everybody.
Awesome. Yeah, I think it's really cool that both you and Esther are on there, given the work that you're doing with marginalized people in the space. And
Yeah.
I want to actually ask you about that. I asked Esther kind of a similar question. She has some kind of support tools for the folks that she's working with.
Mhm.
And how do you feel things are progressing in the tabletop RPG space for marginalized people?
I think it's it's tough, because I think if you were to like look at it maybe on a graph, you would see progress, right? But I think like anything that has that kind of like data, it's not going to be linear. I think there are times when things really look better and improved, and there are times where there's still a lot of stuff that we're fighting against to have a voice, to have space, to be in the room, to get hired as a freelancer. And so yeah, I think that what I have found is that there are more groups of marginalized folks who are willing to take care of each other, more often than not. Recent Twitter discourse aside. But I think that they're, generally speaking, there's a lot more groups of folks who are like, we are going to make this to give platforms to other marginalized creators. Utopia is
Hmm.
one that always comes to mind. The streaming channel Name This Domain is another one. And there's so many shows, or so many platforms, streaming channels, Discord groups, things like that, that we're now have the opportunity to like work together, help each other out, show each other when a new opportunity has come up, be a voice for each other. And so in a lot of ways, I think that has helped a lot. I think what's going to help that more also is that when other people who aren't uh, BIPOC folks are adding in their voice as well, and using their power and position to also look for folks like myself and like you and other folks to say like, hey, yeah, we are looking to hire diverse voices,
Hmm.
and making it a priority, and actually doing the work, and not just saying the thing. um,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Right.
So in ways I have seen it get better, even over the past couple of years, but I still think there's a really, really long way to go in that. And I think that it's important that not all the work falls on the people who are already marginalized to have to do it themselves.
Yeah, I would agree. That's something, having talked with and interviewed a lot of folks at Paizo, I'm surprised that it's still predominantly not people of color. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
a very small percentage of people working there.
Hmm.
Yeah, they've been hiring a lot of freelancers,
Yeah.
right? They've been working hard at that, but actually, developers, designers, editors, it's something, for a company that's really trying to work on that. it'd be nice to see more there. Wizards of the Coast is probably even worse
Yeah,
in a lot of ways.
that's
So, um,
that's really bad. Yeah,
yeah.
to that end, I 100% agree with you. I do also, I don't know if you saw the news today, but shout out that Paizo did hire uh, Rue to
Yes,
be
I saw
a
that. I
marketing
saw it
person.
on
So yeah,
Discord. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
shout out to Rue because Rue is incredible, an amazing organizer and just an incredible person. So yeah.
Very cool. All right. So, what advice do you have for people interested in getting into podcasting and game design work?
Do it. Um, I would say on the game design side, I would definitely say just try, just write stuff,
Mhm.
create things, try out new mechanics, run more games. That helps a ton, so you can kind of see how other systems work. But yeah, the in game design for me, and I think for a lot of people, the biggest thing is just to do it. And if your barrier is like this is scary to do, make a one-page game. It doesn't have to be you don't have to have a ton of systems in it. But the more I think that you do that, the more confidence you're going to build. And I think you'll become inspired as you go from one idea to the next and go, yeah, you know what, I'm going to try this. Like, I think if I had never made that one page game, I would have never made The Corrupted. And I would never be in a
Right.
position where I'm going to have a book now that's going to be in people's homes with my name on it.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I think it's really important in game design to just try. And if you already are GMing games, like one of the biggest pieces of advice that I've gotten is like, if you're already running games, you're kind of already doing game design in the sense that you're learning, you're using systems in ways to facilitate a game. If you're doing homebrew content, that's, you know, that's the next step. So yeah, just give it a shot. In podcasting, I would say it is important to also do it, but I feel you're if your goal is to do podcasting long term, or you have any sense that you want to do it, to try to pursue it to a level of success that you feel would be that you would find successful, right? It doesn't have to be like 10,000 downloads per episode or whatever, but just something that like you would feel like I have an audience that I'm happy with, et cetera, et cetera. Basically, if you're not like in it to just like, I want to do this for my own and for my best friend, like that kind of
Yeah.
thing. I think it's very important to do some planning first,
Mhm.
um, to do some test recordings, to do some test edits, to learn. Like, there's a lot of things I think that it's very easy to just record something and throw it out there. But if you want people to listen to it, I think that their listeners, many listeners, to speak generally about this, many listeners will give a lot of leniency for sound. But I think that there's also a very large group of people who, once they listen to something that doesn't, that to them is not like good audio, it's going to be hard to retain them as a listener.
Right.
Personally, I'm very hypersensitive to sound, so if like there's a lot of stuff going on in the background and it the you know sibilance is all over the place, like I just it's hard for me to do. So yeah, so I would say think about what your goal is first, and then plan on the best way to attain that goal. And it doesn't have to be super expensive. It's probably a lot less expensive than you might think. And yeah, but I do think it's important to do some planning when it comes to podcasting specifically. And if you're going to do an actual play podcast, you have to do even more planning.
Yes, I've been running an actual play for a while. We started in person,
Yeah.
headsets all around, microphones all around, having a mixer on the table.
Mhm.
And it wasn't even at my house. I had to bring it all to somebody else's house,
Yeah.
set it up each time. Oh man. Um, yeah, I one of the things I will say is so like, your mic and boom arm and uh what do you call that? The windshield there.
Yeah.
I
Pop
actually
filter.
bought a set just like that online used for $20.
Yeah.
It's like there's so many people who are getting out of podcasting after trying it that
Yes.
it's really easy to get good deals on equipment, a
Yeah.
good equipment to get
Yeah.
started.
And I will say too, like a lot of times you'll hear like, oh, we'll just get like a Blue Yeti or whatever.
Oh, no, 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 no.
Please don't. But
Yes.
also the this whole setup that I have, this microphone that I talked about, the Samson Q2U with the
Yeah.
boom arm, with the pop filter,
Pop filter.
which
That's
is
what it is.
which is USB to my computer.
Right.
You don't have to
Yeah.
have the additional setup. Cost $100 on Amazon.
Right. Yeah. No,
Um,
it's a great
like if you're
deal.
going to pay $60 for a microphone that you're going to have to eventually upgrade, just save a couple more weeks and use that $40 to get
Yes.
this. Because this, I think, is for me, I don't imagine that I'll upgrade from this microphone until I get to like a Shure microphone and have like a
Right.
full on, and that's just, it's so much money. Which if you can afford it, do it, because it's worth it. I
I'll
don't think
tell
anybody
you.
sounds better than they do on
So
a Shure, but
I get a Shure here, and I pick it
yeah,
up for under $200 used
yeah,
again online.
yeah,
And yeah, I look for good. Now I look for a lot of good deals,
mhm,
and I have so many extra mics and stuff lying around, and so like the setup that I started with that you have now, my co-host on Digital Divination, Jason Keeley, uses that now.
yeah,
So I do make use of these things,
yeah,
but it's
yeah,
like,
yeah,
yeah. I'm like you though. I'm like super sensitive to sound and
mhm,
audio and background noise and everything. So I annoy our actual play folks quite a bit because I'm asking them, "Oh, can you turn this down? Can you do this? Move closer?" All
yeah.
that stuff.
Yeah.
So
It's honestly like it's created a situation that I recently tweeted out that I wish that one of the things I would love to do is like create a program where marginalized folks can have like basically like, hey, we want to do an actual play podcast. There's 5 of us, right? Because that's a typical size.
yeah, yeah,
And like you can basically apply for the scholarship and just have 5 of these mics, the Reaper code and like and some plans on like how to use it. And
yeah.
so I've been working with some folks to see about like making that a reality. I'm not going to make any promises on when that's going to happen, but I think it's something that is a possibility. And the reason it's a possibility is because if folks can come together and donate to a charity stream or any kind of other kind of like crowdfunding type thing for the cause of creating a space where marginalized voices have everything they need to succeed, to like take their audio to another level and learn how to use their software and stuff like that. Like I think that is a huge help because it is another roadblock. And if somebody's already not going to listen to your show for whatever inherent biases they
Right.
have, and then you finally convince them to do it, and then it's the audio isn't great, by no fault of own, it's just what you've got to work with. Like then it's one more thing in the way. And I would love to be able to take down those barriers. And I hope that people who don't have the same hypersensitivities that we have listen to
Yes.
those shows, and give them the opportunity, because there's amazing stories to tell there. So yeah.
If you do something like this, I have some nice Audio Technica mics from my actual play that are literally just sitting on the shelf.
Yeah.
Um, so I would gladly donate them.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll definitely, I'll reach out and let you know, because it is something that we're working on. We just don't have dates and things
Yes,
like
for
that.
sure.
So yeah.
All right. So in addition to that, what's next for Navarre? What's going on?
Right now it's mostly I'm waiting on this the corrupted to get published,
Mhm.
and kind of deal with all of that, and then after that, yeah, I will be continuing to make other games. I have some ideas that I think are going to be really fun for future stuff. I will be continuing to write supplements and scenarios for the corrupted, and to support that game, and
Nice.
possibly do updated versions if it's needed in the future as well. Um, and yeah, just trying, mainly what I'm trying to do now is get into the TTRP industry as a freelancer. I'd love to be able to write and design if somebody wants me to, in that regard, because I really love it, and I think it would be great to, to get paid to do it as well. Um, but yeah, so alongside with that, I got some new games cooking. I will not be doing any more. I will not be creating any more podcasts because four is plenty.
Mhm.
And but yeah, just you know, coming back to Secret Nerd Podcast soon. I'm thinking, getting more of an unwavering force on and out there and exposed to more
Mhm.
people. Coming back to Escape the Dark, and yeah, just having a lot of fun with No Direction, and hanging on to that
Very
as long as I
cool.
can. So yeah,
Great. Well, Navar, it's been great getting a chance to chat with you and get to know you better. And
yeah, you too.
it's been super having you on the podcast today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.